Hi everybody and welcome to this episode of the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. Please make sure to remember that you're liking, subscribing and sharing. Most of all, we need you to be hitting the subscribe button. Without 1,000 subscribers, we are literally in no man's land as far as YouTube is concerned. So please help us to get there so as we can continue to help you and inspire you with these incredible episodes. This episode, we are joined by the amazing Suzy Horton, local councillor for the Liberal Democrats. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah, always in Southsea. So school in Southsea, social life in Southsea, teenage pranks in Southsea.
Yes, the good old days when everything was on the seafront, right?
Very interesting experience for me, and I suppose I learned a lot from that about what happens outside the school gates, how that affects children
inside the school gates,
the school gates, and it was a massive developmental learning curve for me as well. It was full on, really, and I thought, this isn't my philosophy of education. It's about assessment and measuring. And I used to have this phrase of measuring stuff doesn't make it grow.
Well, hi everybody and welcome to the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. We are joined today by the fabulous Suzy Horton, who is local councillor for Southsea on behalf of Liberal Democrats. Hi Suzy.
Hello, nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good,
yes,
good.
very excited to be here.
Oh no,
thank
I'm
you.
really excited that you agreed to come along. It means the world to us at Politely Rebellious, so thank you. How's your week been? Or it's Monday today, isn't it?
It's Monday. I've managed to fit a few things in,
Yeah.
some personal things. I had my eyes tested this morning.
Nice.
Caught up
Any
with
changes or prescription the same?
more or less.
Yeah, nothing major.
Not having to buy more glasses urgently, put it that way. I think they described it as normal for getting older.
Nice.
And then I've had a couple of meetings, and here I am now.
Because you're a busy lady, aren't you?
Very busy.
And I think that this is one of the reasons why we wanted to invite some politicians and councillors and whatnot onto the podcast. Is one of the things that I think people don't quite understand and recognise with councillors is that yes, you're paid, but it's not very much to write home about. And so what that means is that you actually do it as a bit of a labour of love on top of your actual day job, right?
Yeah.
And am I right in saying you're a lecturer?
I'm not anymore.
Okay.
I was, and interestingly, that's exactly what happened. The more my political career grew, my lecturing career got more and more part-time. And so I stepped back from that just a couple of years ago.
Oh wow, not long at all.
Yeah, not long ago at all. But I do have another job which is also political, but not Portsmouth related.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that? What does that mean?
So I work for Liberal Democrats HQ.
Oh wow.
I'm part of their campaign team.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
it takes me to other areas.
Wow.
But still within the whole political thinking.
Yeah. And that must really obviously benefit your role as a councillor and vice versa.
They do complement each other.
Yeah. And so tell us about your early life. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
So I'm Portsmouth born. I am the 5th generation of very strong women from Portsmouth.
Oh wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're a proper Pomponian who was born at St Mary's?
I was.
Oh.
Yeah. So Portsmouth born and bred.
Yeah.
As I say, my grandmother's mother and her mother, and so we go back generations. Went to school in Portsmouth, and I had a very happy childhood. It wasn't without its hiccups.
Yeah.
But I had a real sense of family, always.
So Southsea is really at the heart of everything that you do, not just as a councillor. Yeah. So were you raised in Southsea?
I was born actually just outside Portsmouth. We were living in Purbrook at the time, but moved in by the time I was 4.
Oh, wow.
To the same house. My mum still had the house until she passed away last year. So so we still got the family home, and always in Southsea. So school in Southsea, social life in Southsea, teenage pranks in Southsea.
Yes, the good old days when everything was on the seafront, right?
Yeah, everything was on the seafront,
Yeah.
and the summer was always glorious, of course.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's admirable when people work as councillors or members of parliament in constituents that they maybe didn't grow up in, but there's something just really special about growing up and then giving back to the place where you were born and raised, right?
Absolutely. I've never ever been a sort of career politician. I never planned to do it, and it comes from exactly that kind of emotional connection with somewhere and wanting to change it for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your early life and your early career, so as you say, a career in politics isn't necessarily where you were heading.
No.
So tell us about your
Always
career
wanted to be a teacher. Always wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid and sort of lined up my teddy bears and
you
took
could
a register.
I love that.
Did all that. So I always wanted to be a teacher, but I was brought up, it's funny when you look back, because I was always brought up in a political environment.
Okay.
So both of my parents were involved in local politics.
Oh, wow.
And so that was where I guess I absorbed what it was, what local politics was like. My mum in particular never left me in any doubt about how fortunate I was and how other people weren't fortunate. So that was kind of embedded in me. And I was very politically interested when I was a teenager. I was very much into youth CMD at the time and other political activities, but I very much, I think at the same time, rejected it because I'd had it at home a lot. Yeah. And so I just wanted to be a teacher. I just wanted to teach. I had nothing to do with politics.
And if you were going to do it, it needed to be on your terms.
Exactly.
On your journey.
That's a really intuitive point, because I think, if anything, I rejected my mum's politics and wanted to sort of be myself. So anyway, I wanted to be a teacher, so I went away to university and trained to be a teacher, and then I lived in East London for 15 years.
Oh wow.
And I was a teacher in East London.
That must have been really insightful.
It was.
Coming from Southsea, and like you said yourself, your mum always explained to you that you had a nice life to then be dropped into East London.
It was, and very interesting even within East London, within a couple of miles. So the first school I worked at was quite middle class. It was very multicultural, but it was very middle class multicultural. So a lot of doctors and lawyers and professional, middle class professional families. And then the head teacher I was working with, he went what's called south of Newham Way, south of the A13. To a challenging area, and I followed him. Well, he poached me, I think.
Is that more like Stratford?
It's actually south of there. It's basically before the Docklands got redeveloped. It's that bit along there.
Oh, wow.
Tate Lyle Sugar Factory.
Oh wow!
And really interesting, because I was there for about 12 years, and in that time, housing policy changed, and it went from a predominantly white working class tough neighbourhood to a very multicultural neighbourhood. A very, very interesting experience for me, and I suppose I learned a lot from that about what happens outside the school gates, how that affects children
inside the school gates,
and it was a massive developmental learning curve for me as well. And I think with hindsight, that also informed this kind of burgeoning sort of political itch.
Fire like sparked something. But that's really interesting, because I would imagine that when you were working in East London and you saw those changes, that would have come at a time way before Southsea experienced those changes. I grew up in Somerstown, so I grew up in Somerstown in an era sort of like late 80s, early 90s, where it wasn't particularly diverse. It was, quite run down and whatnot. But then obviously over the last sort of 20 years, even the last, I would say 10 years, Southsea, Somerstown and all of the surrounding areas have become hugely populated and massively diverse. So that experience in East London must have really helped you, unbeknownst to you at the time, when transitioning back to Portsmouth and then in your political career.
No, I agree with that. But actually what was really weird, I moved back in 2003, so it's quite a long time ago now. And I arrived back in July, and for the first few weeks, I mean, I'd always come back.
Yeah.
I'm a big Pompey fan, so I'd always come back for the football. And the first few weeks I was back, I was like, there's something really weird.
Yeah.
And I suddenly thought, oh my God, there's no multiculturalism.
Yeah.
I'd literally noticed it having lived in East London and gone on buses and tubes and all the rest of it. And then, of course, when the university returned at the end of the summer, I was like, this is what I
And I think that's part and parcel of it, right? As the university has grown, a lot of people have stayed on from university and decided to make Portsmouth their home.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting now when you walk through, you know, Fratton and Albert Road, and you see the diversity in the shops and the restaurants and the hair shops. It's phenomenal.
We all benefit, right?
Exactly, precisely. I mean, I don't have to go to London to get hair products anymore, so that's great. Us curly-haired girls, you know. I know it's not curly today, but naturally, it's a beautiful fro, so to speak. So, yeah. And so, what did you end up focusing on with teaching? What was your kind of subject?
So I was primary school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was primary school teacher, as I say, for 14 years, and I was deputy head teacher in a school that was growing and growing, and then the head teacher was retiring, and I had to make a decision about whether I wanted to step into that. And it was at the time when the national curriculum had really got a grip, and it was at a time when assessment was full on.
Really?
And I thought, this isn't my philosophy of education. It's about assessment and measuring. And I used to have this phrase of measuring stuff doesn't make it grow.
Well, I love that.
Yeah. So and so I got really disillusioned. And it's funny because it's a pattern I've seen that develops in my life. I plant a seed, which I think is probably subconscious, saying you're done with this.
Yeah.
But it grows and grows, and then suddenly I go, that's it,
I'm done.
there's something else.
Yeah.
And other people go, where did that come from?
To them, it probably seems really useless, right? Whereas you've already digested and kind of reached that career.
Exactly
or whatever.
Exactly that. And so one day I just came out of a meeting and I thought, I don't actually believe in anything I've just asked the staff to do.
Wow.
I've got to go.
That's powerful.
So I just resigned. I didn't have a job to go to.
Or anything. What am I going to do? How am I going to eat?
So there was a big so that was that, and that was in 2003. And then I saw a job advertised at the university, and very in a very synchronized kind of nature. It was focusing on learning support, which of course in those days was just beginning
to edge its
way in. And I'd done some work with East London University as a secondment, 1 day a week secondment on piloting some learning support training. And so I leapt from primary school teaching through to higher education.
Wow.
And loved it.
Yeah,
and I loved it. I taught on a degree, it was a foundation degree for learning support, and it was typically women in those, and we'll go back 20 years now, who'd left school, probably had a good sound education, had got married, didn't have the option of doing both, or had chosen to focus on their families, and so didn't have A levels, or and so went back, but they were the most delightful people to teach. They were they really valued education, really smart, really wanting to succeed, 100%
at
attendance.
A time when they probably thought at some point that wouldn't even be an option.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden it was.
Exactly, they valued it.
Yeah.
And I loved doing that, so I did that.
That's amazing.
And then and then I had, and then a similar thing happened, that suddenly assessment was taking over. I was working on another degree course, and I thought, oh, here we go again. And so decided, I think it was a little bit of a midlife crisis, but I decided that I was just going to go and do something for me. So I went and did a philosophy master's.
Oh wow! Oh, that's incredible. I bet that was delicious.
It was just. I was like, I'm interested in education and I'm interested in philosophy. So I literally searched online and found the Institute of Education did a master's in philosophy of education. So I thought,
that makes
do you know what? I've never done a master's before, so I'll go and do that. So I rocked up to the interview and I said, exactly that. I know a lot about education and I'm interested in philosophy.
Yeah.
But and they said, yeah, come on board.
Do it.
And it changed my life actually.
Was that in Portsmouth as well?
No, that was up in London.
Oh, wow.
The Institute of Education in London. So
Wow.
I just did very part-time at the university just to keep the money coming in. And
how do you feel about education today? How do you feel about, because there's so much talk about the national curriculum and how it's all a bit broken, and I myself actually home educate my 11-year-old, so I took him out of school 2 years ago, not because I'm anti-system at all. We live in a nice area and he was going to a great school. He's very academic, doesn't have any special educational needs, but it just wasn't fulfilling him. He wasn't being challenged enough. From an education standpoint, he wanted more, but he'd have to, kind of wait until everybody else had caught up before he could move on. And he'd rather be playing the drums and guitar for 4 hours a day, So I'm not kind of either way on education. I think you do what works for you. But what's your kind of thought process on it as an outsider now?
Well, it's also part of my role now, obviously. So I'm the cabinet member for Children, Families and Education. So I have a responsibility about, getting kids to go to school and enjoy school, and if people are home educating, to support people home educating as well. My own philosophy of education is not one that's replicated in the current mainstream education system. There's no secret about that. I'm very much come from a child-centred education.
You're very supportive of the home education community, aren't you?
I try to be. I try to be, and I absolutely understand why a lot of people, when it comes to home education, I think some people, as you say, are philosophically driven by it. They are anti-mainstream education. They've never intended their children to go to it. But increasingly, some people choose it because it's better for their child given the situation that's going on in school. And increasingly, we find that around children who've got additional needs or different needs. And I absolutely respect parents for making that choice for their kids. And it's partly, I think we're seeing an increase in this because of the one-size-fits-all nature of the current curriculum. Personally, I'd get rid of league tables. That's what I would do.
So where the schools are judged based on their results, which has a ripple effect down to the children sitting their SATs, and it's all geared towards... Because it's interesting, because things like SATs and not really anything to do with the children, are they? That's to grade the school, so as the school can be put into a league table, right?
I mean, you could argue that it does benefit the children. I think where I feel I've ended up sitting, even when I left education, was if I'm a teacher, and actually I have to say at this point, teachers work so hard.
Oh, wow. You take your hats off to them.
They work
every
so hard,
day.
and they, over the last few decades, they have been
put up with so
they've
much.
just changed from this direction to this direction. The amount of directives that have come out of government since there was a big key piece of legislation in 1988, which was when I started teaching. Since then, there have been thousands of directives, whereas prior to 1980, this is where the politics and the education comes in for me.
Intertwines,
If you actually look prior to 1988, there isn't a lot of interference by politicians in the curriculum in schools. There was very much a sense of teachers have professional conduct, right? They have the skills, they are a profession, and they know what's best within their profession.
So they're given the autonomy as a professional to do what they feel is best.
And they're kind of, Thatcher, no surprise here. Sorry if this is all a bit
No, absolutely not.
But actually, we all know that Thatcher's main aim was about dismantling union power, and the fallout of that was legislation around what goes on in the classroom. So the national curriculum came in, and my view on it is it raised the bottom. There was some shocking teaching going on, and with very little monitoring or standards. And it raised the bottom so that every child had an equal base, as it were, on a minimum level of education. But in my opinion, it squashed the top.
Yeah.
And the creativity,
Yeah.
the child-centeredness, as you say.
Yeah.
My first year teaching, I can remember it clear as anything. I'd have some kids over in a corner dismantling an engine
Yeah.
and putting it back together.
Oh wow.
And some kids on an old dot matrix printer
Yeah.
doing a story, some people doing
that's
maths.
phenomenal.
But because they didn't all have to do the same at the same time.
Oh my
all the
god,
rest
what a
of it.
beautiful world that would be.
It was wonderful. And
Oh.
you'd come up with an idea of a play, and for the whole week the classroom would be upside down because you'd be making costumes, learning lines, making the backdrop, doing this and this.
So it's almost like that saying of if it's not broken, why
Yeah.
fix it? So it kind of needed a bit of rejigging and, like you say, to help bring the bottom up, but went too far.
In my opinion, and of course what happened is once you have a standardised curriculum, so everyone's doing the same thing all over the country, then you can measure, and that's when the measurements started coming in, and that's really where my love of teaching is still there. The power of education to change people's lives is still at the core of me.
Absolutely.
But my love of the school system was stretched, put it that way.
Faded.
But my view has always been, if you're a teacher and you're paid to be a teacher, what you need, your job is to get your kids in your class to be most successful under the current system. They are not my guinea pigs, so that's what I left. Because I thought I can't do it with all my heart anymore.
You can't deliver in the same way. So when you sort of made that shift into politics, and when politics started becoming more of your everyday life, how long have you been a councillor for now?
So just 10 years next year.
That's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what made you go down that road? Where had you already? So you hadn't always been passionate necessarily about politics, but at what point did you think, right, I can do something here, I can be a change?
Yeah, I think it was a confidence thing. I've always had an innate sense of fairness and justice, and actually I think most kids have. If you've ever been a primary school teacher and you get kids sent to your office to sort out an argument, my experience is 99.9% of the time, if a child has an opportunity to step back from maybe being embarrassed, they'll be honest, and they know what's right and wrong, and actually you just got to de-escalate it to find that out.
Was that nature versus nurture side of things? Where, they're kind of maybe born a certain way, but
yeah, possibly, but I just have a positive view on human beings, to be honest. Believe it or not, I do. I think there are. I have a positive view of human nature, but sometimes people have stuff happens to them which results in them behaving in a way that makes them not look so. It doesn't look so positive. But anyway, so I'd always had that sort of sense of justice, and I'd had my issues that I was interested in when I was younger, like animal rights was a big thing for me at some point. CND was a thing for me.
What's CND?
So that was Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament.
Oh,
so your sign.
You know when you're like, I swear I've heard of that somewhere. I've heard of that somewhere. We wrote a blog on that.
So that was, in fact, that was the only time I ever got really into trouble at school and got suspended. Was for organising a little protest about that. But then when I was at university, there was a non-stop picket outside South Africa House, which was an anti-apartheid thing, and I got very much involved in that. So I'd always had these little bursts of almost like single issue type things that I'd got into, but then I'd always put my heart and soul into my career. So when I did the philosophy masters, I did a unit on political philosophy.
Right.
And that's really
triggered
it, and started looking at particularly education in a philosophical and political light, and tying up the bits of my life.
Wow, that must have been really eye-opening.
It was.
And I guess that moment of, not that you would have been completely unaware of how the two are intertwined, but how closely they do come together.
Do you ever do that thing in life when you think that is really the synchronicity of it all? Because I did the masters, I was going back to the university to teach a unit that nobody wanted to teach, that I loved, which was the interrelationship between sociology education and politics and education legislation.
Wow.
It's almost like this tumbleweed through history of how changes in society affect political decisions around education legislation, but then of course once you bring the legislation it affects society.
It's like a round and around and again and again. Yeah. Just almost like a roundabout that you can't get off of.
So I was teaching that. I'd just done my masters. I'd always found the Liberal Democrats to be my political home. And so I started doing a bit of volunteering for them.
So that's who you sort of felt some synergy with as far as views.
Yeah. It was around inclusion really and acceptance of people but also this sense of I genuinely believe when people have the right tools around them, they can be responsible for their own lives. So I'm not into the state replacing a sense of personal autonomy, and so that had been my political home for a long time, even when it wasn't, people used to go, what? And so I started helping with them, and then people started saying to me, why do you stand for council? And do you know what's interesting, and I think a lot of women go through this, it was my lack of confidence.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it was like, I don't want my face on a leaflet. I don't want to be on a podcast.
Yeah. Look at her now, people. Look at her now.
I couldn't do public speaking.
It does come a lot later for women, doesn't it? Yeah. In a lot of arenas, I think. A lot of different career avenues and whatnot. It takes us longer to wake up and see how amazing we are,
Exactly.
And so you did. So you stood and you knocked doors and you interviewed for the role, and 10 years later you're still
3 times elected now.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think it is about you that encourages the people to keep you in that role?
I think I try and avoid the unnecessary drama.
Yeah.
I really do try it.
Yeah.
I hate it. I'm renowned within our group for rising above it, looking for commonality. I don't want to sound like I'm, anything like special. I just don't like conflict.
Yeah. And do you mean by that, this is something that I was speaking with another politician about recently, and it was quite hard for me not to get a bit heated, but where there's this kind of prehistoric way within politics of, instead of kind of I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, which does tend to happen, in corporate and whatnot, it's more I'm going to put you down to make myself look better.
Yeah.
Like that type of drama, I don't understand.
I mean, essentially, you're in competition with each other the whole time, and that's the bit that I find the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of like some of the councillors that you work alongside with or nearby, ultimately, you're in competition with. You could be in competition with each other, but you are in competition with each other. Hence the kind of pre-election stuff where suddenly people start coming out saying all these things.
Yeah.
Personally, I try and keep to the facts.
Yeah.
But you do have to promote yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes you into the territory of someone.
There's like a fine line.
There's a fine line. I do my very, very best not to make things personal.
Yeah.
And try and stick to the facts and the arguments. But sometimes, it is difficult.
Shop all the latest now at politelyrebellious.co.uk.
There's an artificiality about it that actually is interesting, but you're absolutely right. That adversarial nature in politics goes back a long
It does.
time.
It goes back so many years, and I feel that the sort of generations now and those to come are a bit more in tune with inclusivity and collaboration, and I think that's why it's becoming more and more of a turn-off to see politicians going at each other. It's
absolutely.
you're taught now to, you know, be kind and love each other and support each other, and then you've got, you know, a Conservative and a Labour going, you're awful. It's like me having my shop in Drayton and saying, come to my shop because that shop down the road is crap.
Yeah.
That isn't how you advertise and market your brand, is it? You know,
exactly.
There's a certain way of going about it with decorum. I think that some of them do lack.
And I would argue that's what I've tried to make my brand, which is, I mean, I'm tied up with a political brand, and like even if you take it like within the politics within Portsmouth, there will be messages going out from Portsmouth Lib Dems that I don't get to veto.
Yeah.
However, what I do have autonomy on is my own election and my own leaflets and the stuff about me and how I present myself, and that's what I tried to do.
With people.
Tried to focus on hardworking, fair, and just proactive and getting things done. And I think I've been able to do that in a way that is balanced and suits me, and it's really important for me to be authentic as well. I'm not going to be portraying myself as something.
I think that's definitely something that comes across in your, you know, the way that you're viewed as, say, me looking in as an outsider. You know, it's that positive type vibe of being in it together.
I mean, it is my personality as well.
Yeah,
I do try.
And I think that's what makes it
so
visible to those that maybe don't know you. You know.
And also, the other thing I would say is that you're elected to represent people, and you cannot represent every single person in your ward, because they're all different, and what you do is you set out your stall by saying, in my case, I'm a Liberal Democrat, but more importantly, this is what I believe in, this is what the priorities are, this is what I've got done, and this is what I want to get done. And then people have a choice about whether they vote for you or not. We know the whole thing about, we haven't got compulsory voting, so we know that actually 70% of people will stay at home.
Do you think it should be compulsory?
I've thought about this long and hard. What I think we should focus on, it's going to sound like a very political answer, I'm avoiding it a little bit, is actually education. Because I get to tell you a little story, if that's okay.
Please do.
I knocked on a door one day and there was a woman there with a baby, and she said to me, I don't vote. And I said, have you got 2 minutes? Oh, I have to go away, but have you got 2 minutes? She said, yeah. I said, why don't you vote? She goes, because I haven't got a clue who any of you are in the local election. What you stand for. I don't know. She said, I don't even know how it works. I don't know if you're MPs. I don't know anything. So hence my first point, which is about more education, I think, generally. And I said to her, okay, forget about knowing it. I said, do you like having your bin collected every week? Yeah. Do you ever go to the splash part? Yeah. And it's free, Is your child in nursery education? You know, do you ever go to a community centre? Do you go to the? And I went through a whole sort of checklist of stuff, and I said, "That's what you're voting on." Wow. And she went, "Really?"
Yeah.
And I said, "That is what you're voting on." And I said, "Don't just take my word for it. Look at what all the opposition are going to say. You're going to get leaflets through your door. A lot of it will be the same, but some of it will be different, and that's people's different priorities, and that's all that differentiates the political parties." And then she contacted me afterwards and said she voted for the first time. I don't even know how she voted, but actually...
But the fact that she
voted... She will talk about voting exactly to her child.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel there needs to be more education.
Do you think it needs to start, obviously, when we're small? Yeah.
I was like coming back to my mum and nan, you know, who basically were the big influences on my life. It's about responsibilities, and my nan used to say to me, people die. I couldn't vote. She couldn't vote when she was younger. And she's just, you know, it was that importance of actually you're part of something bigger,
and if you want there to be change, then you need to be.
It's an imperfect system.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And sometimes, you know, you can look at a particular party and you might not agree with everything or 100% of what they stand for, but if you can even say that you agree with 60% or 70% of what they stand for, then that's enough reason to go to that ballot box and pop your vote in. And yeah, I mean, maybe there's something here, you know, with your background in education and your experience now within politics, and that merging the two of them together in some way, shape or form.
We've set up, one of the things that I really wanted to do is to create a youth cabinet. To, you know, to have that voice represented within the council. Isn't going to change the world, no, but actually those young people are now engaging with other young people within Portsmouth and actually feeding that back, and their voices are being heard. It was really important to me that it wasn't just a tokenistic thing.
And actually, I remember some of those, is it Ben Dow?
Ben Downing.
Like there are a lot of young people who started doing that, who have then gone on locally to dedicate themselves in some way, shape or form to that space. So it works. Proven method. It works.
He was the member of Youth Parliament.
I remember. That's amazing. It's just absolutely beautiful. What would you say is one of the most rewarding projects that you've worked on as councillor?
Oh, that's interesting. One of the most... It's interesting because there's rewarding and there's successful campaigns. So I can think of a successful campaign where this was one of those ones where I was just doing my emails and I saw an email come through about putting a 5G mast on the one little remaining bit of green in my ward, and just jumping out, going and talking to residents. Even stood in front of a digger on the day when I came.
No, you don't.
So it's about improving the environment, but I'd have to say the most rewarding bits for me are the bits we'd never put on a leaflet, which is the casework.
Is it hard sometimes, so the individual situations, where
and knowing when you've intervened and somebody has been trying their best to sort something out, and a councillor's intervened and it's literally changed their life.
And you can make the difference like that.
Such a privilege.
It's frustrating though, isn't it, that it can sometimes take, you know, an individual trying so hard to get a result, and one email from one person can make all the difference. I've experienced that myself actually, and it's fantastic and it's phenomenal and it's great to have that support, but at the same time you're just like, really?
No, I agree with you.
They said the same thing I said 6 months ago.
I know.
It's interesting, isn't it? Do you ever find it difficult to stay motivated working for a party and with a party who are unlikely to see full power in Parliament because of the way that it historically has been between the red and the blue? The red and the blue bore off the red and the blue.
Interesting one. Well, of course, at one point we were in coalition and that didn't work out very well.
Yes, well.
That was, in a way, that was harder.
I am
happier. I found it difficult being a Lib Dem in coalition because so many of the compromises really stretched my kind of support. No, I don't find it. I always think like there are days when the Liberal Democrats have come up with ideas which I think like maybe not the best thing, or I don't really agree with it. But I always think actually there's nowhere else to go for me. I look at what we call the preamble to the Constitution, which is, you know, the values-based statement about why you're a Liberal Democrat, and there's nowhere else for me to go. And I can live that every day. I take those values out there. So no, I'm not seeking power for its own sake. That's probably the best way.
I suppose it leads back to where you were saying about authenticity, and as long as you're being authentic to yourself and your own values and what you believe in, and that aligns with the party that you've chosen to be a part of.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nice when you're winning. And I worked on a couple of other areas on this last general election. Chichester one and a few other places. And it was really nice to, it was a nice feeling, but it's what you do with that that's really important.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so you spoke briefly there about your journey into politics and obviously gaining your confidence. Was there like some kind of light bulb moment where you were like, yeah, do you know what, I can do this? I can.
Yeah, and I remember the previous leader of the council kept saying to me, go and stand there. He would like name anywhere there was a gap where we needed someone to stand. And I turned around to him and I said, I promise you, when I'm ready, I will be really good. She says modestly, will you stop badgering me until I'm ready? It was an opportunity to stand where I live.
Yeah.
And that's back to the authenticity.
Really
I could actually go out and say, I live here, I want to represent you.
So powerful.
And I had, by that time, been very, very into the campaigning. So I tend to be, like a lot of people, better when I am confident about what I'm doing, rather than jumping in and stretching myself, so it's the whole bigger fish in a small pond kind of thing. So I felt confident, I knew what I was doing, and therefore I could go out and work hard.
Yeah.
And do well.
Do well.
Yeah.
Be proud of that. And how, I know you mentioned that your mum's no longer with us, but how did she feel when you went into politics?
She was, I think she was really proud, because she stood for council in the 70s and 70s, and she decided that she would focus, she was an academic, so it's weird. So she went to the university for over 50 years.
Wow.
And that was her choice that she made. And I sort of course I went in a way. She was very much a trailblazer, my mum.
It sounds it. I mean, back in the 70s or 80s, standing for council as a woman.
And guess what one of her manifesto pledges was to make Castle Road non-through traffic.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's happened just before she died.
Oh my goodness, she must be so proud.
Yeah, so that was nice. I've got an old leaflet. I've got an old leaflet where she was a little bit ahead of her time. She also wanted free bus passes for pensioners as well. So I think she was very proud of me. Yeah, she supported me as much as she could over my elections, and biggest champion, and my nan too. So my nan lived with my mum. They sadly died within a couple of weeks of each other this time last year.
Oh wow, that's a tough year for you.
Yeah, it was tough, but they were my biggest champions and my biggest critics.
Yes, but those two things often need to come hand in hand, right?
My nan used to say, just because you're elected and you're all up the Guildhall, she said, I know where you came from.
I love that.
She was a character. I mean, if she'd lived in a different time, my goodness me.
God help the world.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one then. So you've had your, two generations of women in your family who have been such a huge influence on you by the sounds of it. Obviously no longer with you, and then you've gone into a full campaign, and
I know.
how do you breathe? Like, what have you done to kind of make sure you stay sane?
Yeah, this year I've always been a bit of a workaholic, as was my mum. And so going through 2 bereavements, 2 funerals, everything this time, it was full on, but a bit of a labour of love to make sure that their lives were celebrated. Right. And you know what? One of the things I've learned about what's happened over the last year is we have so much more freedom nowadays, and if you use it to good, it can be really, really rewarding. And that whole thing around celebrating their lives, for me, that was a mission. Actually having 2 great funerals. Then of course then Christmas was upon us. Yeah. And I thought, right, okay, now it's the next election, and then of course there was a general election. So it's been a year. But
what do you do for you? You'd be surprised how many people struggle with this one, but it's important, isn't it?
Yes. I need to work on that one.
You need to work on that.
I definitely need to work on it. I've got great friends, and actually throughout my entire life, even when I was that kind of grumpy teenager, I was never happier other than spending time with my friends and chatting and
Yeah.
having a laugh. I like gardening and walking and all those kind of cliche things, but I
socialising.
Yeah, I'm not a massive party person.
No, but if you're in your comfort zone with people that you know and adore.
And I do jigsaw
Good
puzzles.
Oh, do you? I love a good jigsaw
I love
puzzle.
a jigsaw puzzle.
I got a huge jigsaw puzzle of the Mona Lisa.
Oh my goodness, that's a challenge.
It's ridiculous. I don't know why I'm doing it to myself. I don't know.
There's an
why.
optimum level of jigsaw
Because there's no
puzzle,
differentiation really in the colour, and it's really, really hard.
It's the one thing I've realised that genuinely makes me forget about my phone.
Yeah, it's a true sense of mindfulness, isn't it?
It really is.
And sometimes my husband and my son come, because I do it upstairs in the bedroom, and I've got it on one of those lovely little puzzle boards, you know, so you can just slip it under the board, under the bed, and then I slip it back out. This is making me look really sad, isn't it?
They're both of us there.
And sometimes my husband or my son will come running up the stairs. What are you doing? And I won't even realise that the sun's gone down and I should have put the light on.
I know.
And so I'm like, why can't I see where this part of Mona Lisa's nose is going? Because the light's not on, it's got dark, and you've lost like 2 hours. But anyway, they'll come running up, and especially my son, because he's 11, he'll be like, God, let me help you, Don't you dare.
Yeah. Oh no, because you have to do it all yourself.
Yes, don't you dare come near my puzzle. Don't. No,
I'm actually with you on that. So that's my mindfulness.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And do you partake in a glass of wine with that mindfulness?
I don't drink.
No.
I haven't drunk for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that a conscious decision? Was that
I was really ill during my 20s. Yeah, I had ME.
Oh, wow.
And was very, very poorly for a long time. And part of that was kind of detoxing.
Yeah.
And I think at the time I felt I needed to have some control over it all. So I was very strict on what I ate.
Wow.
I used to smoke at those days and gave up smoking and drinking and just decided never to start them.
Because ME is one of those illnesses that's kind of got this like dark cloud over it where people don't quite understand it, right?
You can't, it's not easily
diagnosed.
And when I had it, it was very much yuppie flu.
Yeah.
And it was in the 1990s, and I was very blessed by the fact that my head teacher at the time, his wife had it.
Oh wow!
And he was like, I think I know what it is, and I was like in denial at first, but then eventually had to come around to, I was bedbound for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think in a way I think that. You look back on things, don't you, and you have to take the positives from it.
Yeah, I mean that must have given you once you'd recovered, given you
promised myself
skipping in your step and a zest for life that maybe you didn't have before.
Promised myself that I would, if I got better from it, because some people don't. I think I said I'd never moan again, but I don't.
You're in politics, darling.
I don't think anyone who knows me would say that I've kept to that. But what I have done is kept a perspective and always been grateful for the opportunities. I've had the best opportunities in my life.
Yeah, it sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous. Yeah. Your aura is so, like it's just, I'm a bit of an aura person, and it's just like, I just want to hug you, It's like nice positive energy.
I try to be positive. Well, no, it's not an effort actually.
Yeah,
I like when people, when sometimes people recall something and then they recall all of the negative details of it, and I say, oh, I can't remember that. And they're like, what do you mean you can't remember it? You told me. And I'm like, it's gone.
It's gone.
It's like a rolled up carpet behind me.
Yeah. Bye. But that's what keeps you going, isn't it? And allows you to kind of give so much in your professional and personal life, I'm sure.
It's true, and I think, and this has been reinforced by what's happened, but I think because my nan was 105.
Wow.
She died last year and she was 105.
Wow. What's her legend? What was her secret?
I would say Anchor butter and mint imperials.
Wow. Brilliant.
She didn't drink.
Yeah.
She was quite clean living.
Yeah.
But she was, goodness me, was she a character. She was incredible. And my mum, bless her, she looked after her for the last 12 years of her life, like full time.
Yeah.
But with having my nan around for so long, I think it almost made me forget about the passage of time. And when they went like quickly, it's like, oh God, you know, I'm next. I'm next.
Yeah.
But what it also made me realise is life is a series of experiences, and you don't know when the end's coming up.
Yeah.
And actually, not everyone has the choices that I have. I feel very lucky in many ways, but actually where you have choices, make choices that make you feel good.
Yeah.
And when you don't feel good, make other choices.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the beautiful thing, I think, and this is something that I've said a few times now, so apologies to the audience if you're bored of it, but you know, is that one thing I feel so lucky about living in Portsmouth is that there are so many choices available, no matter what background you're from, no matter what class in society you are, no matter what your beginnings are in life, there are so many choices available to us. From education, from socialising, even shopping, you know, people moan about Commercial Road, but it's there, you know, it's still there, there's still choices, there's still options, and look at what is there, not what isn't there, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely my view.
Your mantra.
Yeah.
So Suzy, what would you say is one of the most politely rebellious things you've ever done?
I'd probably say when I was at school, I had this real sense of, that was my political bit in me, about supporting youth CND. And basically the story was, by the way, everyone, we've got someone from British Nuclear Fuels coming to talk to everyone on Wednesday. And I went, I was very polite actually. I went up and said, fine, but can we have someone from UCND to give this counterbalance argument?
Oh wow, very brave, yeah.
And I was told no.
Oh wow.
So I decided what I would do was very quietly arrange for people to Skype, as it was called in those days.
Yeah.
Lots of people did. And then they chose the prefects. Bizarrely, I considered myself to be a rebel prefect, which is probably another politely rebellious thing. And because you could change from the inside. Yeah. And they chose all the prefects to take the registers, and I was the only prefect that was also not there.
Oh wow.
And then there was a roll call on the Monday, and and they were accepting any excuse because they just didn't really want to make a fuss about it. And I thought, no, I'm telling the truth.
I'm telling you why I wasn't there.
I'm telling you why. And my neighbour, my next door neighbour, he said, oh, just say that we went home and like we lost our key or something. I said, you can say what you want, I'm going to tell the truth. And the deputy head teacher who was taking the excuses, he said to me, he looked at me, he knew my mum. And he said, and I said, I Skyped. And he said, you're not making things easy for yourself. I said, I know, but I'm telling the truth.
Yes, and that's important, isn't it?
And I got suspended for 2 days. And I went home and I said to my mum, it's outrageous. And she said, you know the rules, you broke them, you take the punishment.
She was politely rebellious.
She was politely rebellious.
Yes, very politely rebellious. I love that. And so there should be that balance, you know, between, and then the young people can decide, you know,
exactly
what they believe is right.
It's very important.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to hit you now with some wonderful quick fire questions.
Oh.
So there's no right or wrong answer. Would you, so lecturer or councillor?
Councillor.
Any particular reason?
More freedom.
Yeah, freedom. Beach or pool?
Beach.
Yeah. I suppose living in Southsea would be rude not to, wouldn't it? Are you someone who likes to take strolls along the seafront?
I love it.
Yeah, love that. And this one isn't actually relevant now that I know you're, withhold yourself from alcohol consumption, because I wrote gin or vodka.
Yeah.
So,
although someone did tell me last night that one of the non-alcoholic gins, the pink one, is very good.
Oh, really?
And they have done a trawl of all of them.
And so if you're socialising, say with your friends, and they do drink alcohol, what's your go-to?
Oh, I'm a lime and soda girl.
Oh, I love lime and soda.
Lime and soda is just the best. And people used to get it in Wetherspoons when I was younger because it was 5 pence.
Yeah.
But no, it's my go-to drink. Yeah.
And is that lime cordial or fresh limes?
Oh, either.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't get a choice.
Yeah, that's true. That's very.
Or both, I should say.
Yeah. If you had to choose Domino's or Pizza Hut.
Do you know what? I don't think I've had either of them
Do
for
you know,
about
I
20 years.
I felt like that was coming. I felt like that answer was coming in there. How about pizza topping? If you were going to buy a nice...
Oh, I'd probably have, pizza topping would probably be something like ham and olives or
nice.
anchovies.
Yeah. Bit of mascarpone.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
That kind of vibe. And art or music, if you could only live with one for the rest of your life?
Probably art.
Yeah. I love that.
I do love my music.
Yeah.
People are going to be shocked about that because I actually I'm thinking about it more. Live music or listening to
No, I would say more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Live music I really love.
Do
I'm
you?
a folk music fan.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I love.
Do you ever go to Wickham Festival?
Always.
Yeah.
It's my favourite.
Yeah,
It's
I've been
my
a couple of times.
favourite
Great for
time of the
music.
year. It's my holiday. I go
Yeah.
on my own.
Yeah.
I'm well
Do you
known.
camp up there?
No, I don't because I don't drink,
travel.
so I can get home to my bed.
Yeah.
But it's so funny the amount of people say, "Oh, I'm going." I said, "Just going to say up front, I always go on my own and just say hello, and it's fine."
I'm not interested in having
I
my
want
social
to
battery
private.
drained. I love that.
I take my turn.
Yeah. When was the first time you went?
Oh, I think I've been going for 9 years now.
Oh, I love that. It is a good one. It is a good one. It's
my
a
favourite.
lovely eclectic mix of people and vibes and yeah. Do you ever go to Victorious or?
I do go to the Victorias mainly because they are incredibly supportive of actually what we do in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And it's on the doorstep.
Yeah.
If I had to travel very far,
No,
I
you wouldn't.
probably
Yeah.
wouldn't. But
Yeah.
no, Wickham is my fave.
Yeah, no, it is a good one, and it's funny because I don't think it's as well known, obviously, as say Victorious, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a completely different crowd, which is lovely. Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for taking the time to come in. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know the Suzy behind the Suzy Horton councillor. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.